Hi everyone and welcome to DennisDeep Cuts, the 52nd installment of this fine YouTube series. Today we're going to talk about Umeå Hardcore, or specifically Umeå Hardcore of the 90s. Let's see what happens. When I was a young kid, I always felt really out of place. I was a little bit of a loner. And when I discovered music, I discovered that there are other people out there that are like-minded, I guess. And then when I discovered punk, I realized that there were other freaks out there, such as me. Started playing my first punk band around 1987, 88. And then from 1989 to 1991, the small town of Umeå in the north of Sweden had a little bit of a hardcore scene going. But it was more like there was like a hardcore band that played, and then there was a punk band, and then there was a death metal band, and then there was a band that played Guns N' Roses covers. But that's kind of the world that we lived in. Just weirdos and freaks gathered. But it was a very small scene and very, like weirdly unique. And then late 1991, me and David started a band called Refused, and then we started playing live. And around us, a scene grew, and people started coming to shows, people started forming bands, people did record labels and fanzines, and Umeå Hardcore, as I guess most people know it, happened. It was an interesting and fun and exciting time, and at that point, I really felt that I met my tribe, and I felt that, I met like-minded people that I could hang out with, create music with. The scene was short and explosive, as all those fantastic little scenes are. I think that maybe I would say 93 to 98 was like the peak of 90s Umeå Hardcore. So I'm going to talk about that today. All right, so disclaimer, Umeå Hardcore is still happening. I still go to a lot of shows. It's still great. There's still a ton of good bands. But for a lot of people that know about Umeå Hardcore, that was the peak of Umeå Hardcore. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and maybe not so much Refused, but the things that are related around Refused. I'll show you some cool records, and yeah. As I said, I'm not going to really use Refused as a starting point. Instead, I'm going to use this as a starting point. Abhinanda, the complete discography. End Hits Records sent me this last week. It's going to be released on the 26th of February, I think. You can pre-order it now. And I'm going to use this box set, and I'm going to do some sort of unboxing as the starting point of this conversation. Yeah, that's the plan. And usually when I do these episodes, I have a pretty precise idea of what I'm going to talk about. I don't today because it's going to be like a weird unboxing video. So we'll see. We'll see what happens and what that brings us. So for those of you who are confused and say, what's an Abhinanda? Umeå Hardcore of the 90s, there was 3 bands that were like kind of the big bands that made it outside of Sweden. And it was, of course, Refused. And then you had the Donuts. Let me see if I can find some. You had the Donuts, which were an all-female straight edge hardcore band, and if you know anything about the Donuts and such, you know that Sarah, that plays with me in both Invasion and Venice Casino, and we did International Noise Conspiracy together, and she was in Mass History, she was in The Vicious, she was the guitar player of the Donuts, and they were like the real deal. We put out their first CD EP, and then they got signed to Victory Records, and they toured the States in 1995. And they were a big deal. And the third band was, of course, Abhinanda. Abhinanda was like our friends, like the people that we hung out with when we didn't practice. Well, actually, also when we practiced, they were always in our practice space. We went skateboarding with them. They were at the shows. They were like our best buddies. And one time when we were on tour with Refused, they played their first show. I'm not sure it was done intentionally, secretly, but it felt like that. And when they started, it was kind of a jokey band. They were all dressed in Krishna garbs, and they were kind of like mucking about. But quite quickly, they turned into a serious band, and they actually started putting out some fucking great records. And that's what we're going to dive into today. Yeah, let's see what we got here. It's the full discography. I'm just going to do this and see what we have. Because I want to start with this. Let's see here. Demos, EPs, and rarities. Here's a bunch of tracks. They were on some compilations. And this is the first EP, Darkness of Ignorance. They put that out in 1993. And it is interesting, when they started the band, I think Matthias, the bass player, this guy, who's also been together with this singer Jose, like the only members that have been in the band since, I guess, the first practice. He was the only one that really played music before. I think my brother was in the band at the early days. He played drums. But I think Matthias was like the only musician. And here's something that I never thought that I would do. I'm going to talk about Brain Squash Puppies for an extended period of time. And then you ask me, what is a Brain Squash Puppy? Brain Squash Puppies was a band from Umeå that was around, sort of adjacent to the punk and hardcore scene of like 89 to 91. They sounded like Primus. They were really weird. And Matthias was the bass player and singer. And Brain Squash Puppies turned out to be a really important band in Umeå Hardcore. Because when me and David started Refused, we saw Brain Squash Puppies live, and the guitar player Per was someone we like, oh, he's a great guitar player. We should ask if he wants to join Refused. And he did. And the drummer from Brain Squash Puppies was this guy called Chris. And for a little bit, he was in a pretty cool hardcore band called Drift Apart from Umeå. And then he got signed up to play in Abhinanda, and he played guitar on the first Abhinanda full length, which we should have here if we can get it out from the plastic. Senseless. Chris played guitar on this record, and we were pretty excited about this record. He was pretty blown away. And when we kicked Pat out of Refused, we poached Chris from Abhinanda, and then Per joined Abhinanda. So it was like a little bit of a trade-off there. Sorry. So that's Chris, of course. And Chris started also in the Brain Squash Puppies as a drummer. And then, because Brain Squash Puppies kind of kept going, David joined the Brain Squash Puppies as their singer for a little bit. And they moved from like the Primus stuff to more Mr. Bungle, Fate No More kind of style. And then one day I just told David, like, I don't think you should be doing Brain Squash Puppies the same time as we're doing Refused. So I put the kibosh on that band. I'm really sorry. But yeah, the Brain Squash Puppies, two of the guys ended up in Refused, and three of the guys played in Abhinanda. So they were an important band. And Per got fired because he wasn't a punk. He was a great guitar player, but he wasn't a punk. And when we started playing shows, and I mean, he played on our first couple of EPs and demos, and he played on the first full-length album. And we got a Grammys nomination, and I think Per just said, like, why are we still playing shows for free? We should get paid. And then we got a show booked in Lycksele, just a small town inwards into the country. And he didn't show up. And this is before cell phones and everything. So he just didn't show up. And that kind of made us kick him out of the band, because he said that we should get paid to play this. It was like a small festival. And in hindsight, yeah, of course he was right. I mean, they were fucking idiots. But we just wanted to play, and trivial matters like money did not, we didn't care about that. So he got kicked out, but he joined Abhinanda, which I think was great for them. And he's still in the band, because I'm doing this unboxing of the full discography, but Abhinanda is still a band. Jose, the singer, Per and Matthias, and they got a new drummer, and they just put out a 7-inch recently. Anyway, they put out their second record, just called Abhinanda. My brother, who played drums on the first record, left the band, and he started a band called Separation. They put out some cool records, and also I think Jose was in Separation for a hot minute, but then the singer and guitar player from Separation joined me in a band called the International Noise Conspiracy, and then my brother went on to play in a band called DS13, which you might know if you know your punk history. And then, I mean, to this day, he still plays in a bunch of great bands. Like, he's got a new band called 90's, they're fantastic, and he plays in a band called Bad Nerve, they're fantastic. So he's always just been kind of active in playing bands. They got a new drummer, a guy called Daniel. Daniel ended up playing in a band called Isolation years after this, which were a fantastic, like, psych rock band. I talked about it on one of my episodes at their debut album. And nowadays he plays in a bunch of bands, and he actually did play drums in Venice Casino for a couple of shows. It all ties together. But yeah, this is their second album. And then they put out the third final album called The Rumble. Slightly altered lineup again. Adam, who's the guitar player, left, and they have this guy Nicholas to play guitar. Nicholas was actually the guy that built these shelves for the records. Yeah, and this is a pretty cool, like, weirdly ambitious record. I think I'm not gonna say too much, but we put out Shape, and then they put this one out as like a counterbalance, because a lot of stuff happens on this record. It's a cool record. And then I think there's a big booklet with interviews and photos and general cool stuff. Yeah, Abhinanda, the full discography. It's pretty awesome. Abhinanda broke up first time, I think, in 1999. And yeah, Jose moved to Stockholm, and the band broke up. And then they got back together a couple of times, and now they're back together actually playing shows. When Abhinanda put out their first EP, Darkness of Ignorance, I don't think they did it intentionally secretly as well. They just did. And then Jose came and he showed me the CD. I got super excited. And I said, I did this tape label called Umeå Hardcore Records. And I was like, let's do this as a proper record label. And I kind of strong-armed my way into being a part of Desperate Fight. I thought it was super exciting to start like a record label that could release all these great bands that were happening in Umeå. I think today, if we look back at it, I'll be kind of like an A&R and hype man, while Jose was actually the guy that kind of ran the day-to-day operations. But we had an office, and we had a distro where mostly me, ordered records from other labels, and people could come up and buy records and check out the latest in hardcore in the 90s. And we ended up releasing, I think, 26 or something albums over the course of like 7 or 8 years on Desperate Fight. And it was quite exciting. We put out some really cool stuff. And Abhinanda was like the big band on our label. We put out mostly CDs. I am glad to see that some of these records that we put out are finally getting vinyl re-releases. One of the bands that we put out that we all loved was, of course, Final Exit, which was also me and David and Chris. And Chris left the band, and this guy Anders joined the band, and he was also in a band called Said I Was. Final Exit is fucking awesome, and Monument Records put out this full discography, complete discography, a couple of years back. I kind of would like to see the albums re-released as they were as albums. And speaking of Anders and Said I Was, Refuse Records put out the first Said I Was record a while back. I am hoping for the second Said I Was record to be released all Punk Cons. There's one of my favorite records that we put out on Desperate Fact. And I heard rumors, because I'm not really, I mean, if people want to re-release these things, I'm more than happy to, if they want to. I heard rumors that the Straight Edge as Fuck compilations might finally get some vinyl re-releases, which would be fantastic. Another band from Umeå that we released was, of course, Shield. And someone put out Vampire Songs a couple years back on vinyl. It's a pretty cool record. Yeah, Umeå Hardcore. I'm going to show you another Umeå Hardcore band that wasn't a part of our world, part of our scene, but probably my favorite Umeå Hardcore band, of course, the Vectors. The Vectors was, of course, my friend Jens, who played in my first hardcore band, Step Forward, and Carl. Me and David had a band later with him called AC4. And there you have it. Umeå Hardcore, Abhinanda. Didn't talk that much about Refuse, but these bands were all our buddies, and we played tons of shows with these people, and we were all connected. I'm quite excited about this Abhinanda Box-set. I'm going to sit down and really dig in now when I've done this episode. And maybe next time I'll do a top 10 of my 90s hardcore albums. Yeah, that might be something. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Top 10 90s hardcore albums. Let me know what's your favorite Umeå Hardcore record. Let me know if you know anything about Umeå Hardcore before this episode. Until next time, stay well, my friends. Bye-bye.